This is Library Nerds with Words, the podcast that gives you the word on all the cool, nerdy happenings at Peter White Public Library and the library universe beyond. From books and concerts to search engines and story times, the Library Nerds are in and ready to show you that being a nerd can be cool. Get ready, get set, get nerdy. Welcome back to Library Nerds with Words, the podcast that gives you the word on all the cool things going on at Peter White Public Library and the library universe beyond, straight from the people who know it best, library nerds. My name is Marty Ackett, and I'm the Adult Program Coordinator for Peter White Public Library. Joining me today in the Nerd Command Center for the first episode of Season 4 of the podcast is Nerd Beyond Compare local history coordinator here at Peter White Public Library, Cat Shattuck. Welcome back to the podcast, Cat.
Thanks, Marty. I'm so glad to be here and so ready to be here.
She has something that has been plaguing her for a week or so. So anyway, well, I'm super excited to be sitting down with you again. The last time you were on the podcast was way back in August, and when we had a little conversation about one of your favorite movies, Paprika.
Still one of my favorites.
Still one of the favorites.
Hasn't
one
changed.
Of mine, too. I love that. Of course, you are always busy with the local history collection here at Peter White Public Library, helping people find all kinds of information about our area and the citizens who lived here. You might say that Cat is very adaptable. Yes, that is a clue as to one of the things that is on Kat's mind today.
It's like I'm building a theme here.
You really are. But before we get into what is on your mind, we have to play another game of Word on the Nerd. You know how this works, Kat. I'm going to ask you 3 library nerd questions, and you have to answer them for the listeners. So, Kat, are you ready to play
Word on the Nerd?
Kat, this is going to be a game of Would You Rather. I'm going to ask you 3 would you rather questions, and you have to truthfully answer them for the listeners. And all of today's questions have to do with bad or good adaptations of beloved books. So here's your first question. Would you rather watch an adaptation of the Lord of the Rings trilogy starring Will Ferrell as Gandalf? Or would you rather watch an adaptation of the Lord of the Rings trilogy starring Danny DeVito as Gandalf?
Danny DeVito in a heartbeat.
Really? Why?
In a heartbeat. Because, well, I feel like Will Ferrell's brand of comedy is very yelly. Mm-hmm. Think Zoolander, think Elf.
Elf.
Which was just topical on the podcast.
Nights, yeah, absolutely.
So I don't think that he could bring the kind of seriousness to Gandalf that the role demands. But Danny DeVito, on the other hand, I think would balance that seriousness with the comedy aspects.
Okay.
And I, for one, love Lego Lord of the Rings, the video game.
Yep.
Which is another example of something that balances the monumental scenes from the movie with the humorousness of it being Lego. So I think Danny DeVito could actually nail Gandalf.
All right, Danny DeVito. A little shorter than what you expect with Gandalf.
But that would just be part of the comedy, right? He's the same height as the Hobbit.
Like a Hobbit. Exactly. All right. Well, that one surprised me. I thought you were going to go with Will Ferrell. So
I contain depths.
Okay. So now the questions might get a little harder. Here's your second one. Would you rather have your favorite book series adapted into a bad Broadway musical, or have your favorite book series rewritten into a bad graphic novel series?
This one was also pretty easy for me.
Oh, really? Okay.
Broadway musical. Because it's a matter of access, Marty.
Okay.
I could have very easy access to a graphic novel. I could pick it up off of a bookshelf and read it and be mad about it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go see a Broadway musical.
What if they make it into a movie then?
But when have they ever done that?
Probably not very often.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying is that I'd probably never go see it on the stage. Things get adapted into movies pretty rarely from Broadway, with The Color Purple obviously being
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, but I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
But still, it's, like I said, it's a matter of access. If it's not on my radar, I don't have to be mad about it.
If it's not right in front of your face where you can just reach out and pick it up, then we're good. All right. So I guess, Yeah, I get it. Okay, so here's your last question. Would you rather a terrible writer publish terrible sequels to one of your favorite book series, or would you rather a terrible singer write a terrible music album based on one of your favorite book series?
So, I feel like, not for a book per se, but this has happened to me before with, seasons of television shows where, take Northern Exposure, for example.
I love that show.
Me too, except...
Yeah, I know where you're going. Go ahead.
Except for the last season.
Yeah.
And it's so... We've seen this happen time and time again with different shows, where the last season just sort of...
I think David Chase wasn't even there for the last season or something like that.
Like some walk-on roles, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was just terrible. And, the last season was no good. The rest, don't get us wrong, love Northern Exposure.
Adore Northern Exposure.
So good, but that last season just blew it.
Ooh, it's a rough one, that one.
Joel is gone, I think, for most of it.
Joel is gone. He's like become a wild man in the woods or
so
something like
weird.
that, which is so out of character.
Totally out of character.
The ending of season 6, he just wandered into the forest with a vision of New York.
I don't...
That's another podcast.
That is a totally another... Yes, exactly. I totally get that.
Yeah.
So, all
so
right.
that being said, my choice is a terrible music album by a terrible singer.
Okay.
Because then at least I'm just like, oh, well, I'm glad you like the book. You're trying your best. Everyone shows their appreciation in different ways. You go, buddy.
Okay, well...
You got this.
Even if it's like your least favorite singer in the world.
You liked the book? Good for you.
Okay, all right, there you go. So the book has a fan in the musician. So, all right. Well, there you have it. We have come to this end of the adaptation edition of Word on the Nerd with Cat Shattuck, local history coordinator here at Peter White Public Library. And now, Cat, the time has come to find out what has been on your library nerd mind, plaguing it, shall we say.
That's a good term.
It's a little segment we like to call The Word. So, Kat, what have you been distracted by recently?
Oh, boy, Marty. Oh, boy.
She doesn't even know where to begin with this.
I'll begin by saying that about a month ago, the latest Murderbot volume by Martha Wells came out, System Collapse. And if you haven't heard of Murderbot, it's won Hugos, it's won Nebulas, it's won Locus Awards. And Lecky has been quoted saying, "I love Murderbot." And it's just gotten reviews and accolades all over. It's so emotionally connective and a wonderful series of writing. And just the books I could talk about for ages and ages.
Right.
But what's been distracting me specifically, Marty...
Here it is. Be ready for this, everybody.
As with any show... Well, as with any book that receives this much attention, an adaptation is sure to follow.
Yes.
And
she's so excited about this.
Oh, I'm so excited, Marty. You can hear the joy in my voice. I'm so excited.
And through gritted teeth, I can hear that joy.
Apple TV has announced they are making a television adaptation for the Murderbot Diaries.
Apple TV does some good stuff.
This I acknowledge. For All Mankind is really great. I love, what's it called? They did a documentary about small animals.
Oh, yeah.
That was great with the actor who played Ant-Man doing the narration.
Yep.
But.
Yes.
But
we're getting to Murderbot now. Here we go.
I want to preface this by saying, somewhat tangentially, I am a huge One Piece fan.
Okay.
And similarly, when Netflix announced they were going to make a One Piece live-action adaptation, I was skeptical on the light end and furious on the hard end. But as more material behind the scenes came out, as they started showing the casting announcements, as they started showing the sets they were building, they built boats on the ocean. It's beautiful. And the love and attention that went into that show really makes it a worthwhile watch. Okay. As skeptical as I was when it was announced. However,
yes,
the thing about the Murderbot universe, which is, again, if you don't follow the Murderbot Diaries, it is set in a far future sort of corporate dystopia, I'd call it, where robot-human constructs called sec units are sold as tools, as property. They are something that you license out when you're going on a dangerous expedition to a planet or need a little extra muscle. And they're described as being dangerous, deadly weapons in the text of the book because they have this immense physical, violent power. But you need the human intelligence to counterbalance that, to know how to use it. And one of the most prominent characters in the book, Dr. Mensa, once described it as a hellish compromise. And the main character, the titular Murderbot, once said, the anxiety and depression were just a side effect.
Okay.
So that being said, Martha Wells, the author, has created this wonderfully diverse world to live in. Even though it is a corporate desolation, there's still a bunch of really diverse, really interesting characters.
Okay. It sounds like, it just is made for a TV series or something.
Yeah. The problem is that when Apple TV announced their adaptation of Murderbot, they also announced who the leading role was going to.
Oh, here we go.
And that would be Alex Skarsgård.
Now, see, I don't know the Murderbot series. I mean, I've heard about it. I knew sort of the premise of it, but I'm not familiar with the characters. So you have a problem with Alex Skarsgård playing this role.
He's so Swedish, Marty.
And this character's not Swedish.
The thing
She
about
showed me a picture. She showed me a picture before we started recording, and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't look like Alex Skarsgård that much.
No, because the thing about Martha Wells creating this wonderfully diverse universe is that sec units, security units, are comprised of a random selection of DNA to create their cloned human parts. And in a world as wonderfully diverse as this, on which I could maybe count up to 5 light-skinned characters, it is a challenge to think that Murderbot is very blonde and very blue-eyed and very Swedish.
Why do you think they made that choice? Considering the way you've described the character, and everybody knows the character, why do you think they made such a weird choice?
I mean, it could be any number of reasons behind the scenes. Maybe Martha Wells said, I've always pictured Alex Skarsgård in the role. Maybe he really wanted to do it. But you and I both know what the more likely answer is.
Yeah.
And Alex Skarsgård sort of had that almost animalistic action role in, what was it? Was it The Northman? The Norseman?
The Norseman, yeah.
So I can see from sort of an action standpoint why they might have chosen him as an actor, but there's got to be a better option.
What would your better option be? If you just imagine you have free choice, any actor that you want to play that part.
Dev Patel.
Oh, Dev Patel would be great. I love him.
Yeah, I think, have you seen The Green Knight, Marty?
Yeah.
I think after his performance in The Green Knight, he could really pull it off.
Yeah.
But also, Murderbot is a very sarcastic, self-deprecating character. And I don't know that much about Alex Skarsgård, admittedly. But I think that if I had to pick an actor with lighter skin, Robert Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson? I like Robert Pattinson.
Because he's cut his teeth on the Batman movie.
Yeah.
And
which was really good. I think that was one of the better Batman movies that I've ever seen. So, yeah.
And I think that he just naturally has that kind of sarcastic personality that would really work well with the Murderbot character. But that all being said, more than the casting, which is still a problem for me, when it was first announced, I couldn't think of how you could possibly adapt this into a visual media. Because the thing about the Murderbot character is it is processing so many things simultaneously. It is processing so many things in the span of 1 second. It's sort of like Data from Star Trek. You know, how would you visually portray everything that he is doing inside his brain at the same time? It just seems very difficult.
So, and like I said, I've never read the Murderbot series. I know of it, and I knew the premise of it. But, so it's a much more internalized kind of narrative.
It's a very internal narrative. I mean, that's why it's called the Murderbot Diaries.
Right.
Is because the whole thing is framed as its own personal logs for what's happening.
Yeah, the only way you could get away with that is if you have a lot of, like, narration, and, you know, which would never work.
Here's the thing, Marty.
Yeah.
Last night, while I was mulling it over to myself, as I have been since it was announced, I actually thought of a way you can make it work.
How can you make it work?
Within the text, there's a character named Dr. Bharadwaj.
Okay.
And after she learns sort of what a security unit is, how it's been treated, she wants to make a documentary. Because these security units who are created to be at the service of other people are themselves people. And she feels like you could use Murderbot's story to bring awareness to a more general public of this sort of oppression and plight that sec units are being forced into.
Okay.
Where people are afraid of them, but also just view them as tools, like you would a hammer.
Okay.
So what if the Murderbot TV show was just her documentary?
Oh, so there'd be like little interview segments, and then you'd see the actual action. That could work.
I think it would be really interesting. And
what are the chances that they're going to be that smart about it, though?
I mean, I would be pleasantly surprised if this were to happen. You know, I think that style would be great, and especially with the latest addition to this wonderful series, System Collapse, deals with Murderbot, who is obsessed with soap operas, by the way.
Oh, okay.
The whole premise of this book series is basically I disabled the thing that was keeping me a slave, and I didn't know what to do with myself, so I kept my day job and watched TV. It loves watching serials and bad soap operas that go on for 1,000 episodes and all of that. And in the latest installment, faces Murderbot having to make its own media to help other people understand the situation they're in. To be on the other side of that process, not anymore the viewer, but the creator. And so I think that would parallel really nicely with Apple TV taking this show into a documentary type of narrative. To have it be about Murderbot in its own words, telling its story.
Right.
But otherwise...
But do you know, like, what filmmakers are involved in, like, creating, writing, or anything like that? I mean, is is Rebecca like actually working with them to write scripts and stuff like that?
You mean Martha?
Martha was, pardon me, yeah.
I don't think it hasn't been announced that she's involved with the script writing. One of the writers from, I think it was Rogue One, is working on it,
which is a really good movie.
It is a good movie, so... But I think my real worry, Marty, is that they're going to make it more of an action series than it is. And to be fair, it is a very action-heavy series, but I think what really makes it a great book is the inner reflection that happens, the dialogue Murderbot has with itself, and even when it doesn't want to reflect on itself. You know, it's been called, I think by NPR, one of the most human experiences you can find in a book.
Wow.
Even with the main character very adamantly saying it doesn't want to be human. But it is a very human series. And I worry that some of that will be lost.
So, how are you going to give the series a chance?
I'm not sure yet. This is why I brought up the One Piece comparison at the beginning. I've been a longtime fan of One Piece. They announced it, I was livid. But seeing the behind-the-scenes stuff, seeing the casting announcements, seeing the literal boats they built for the actors to be on the ocean, the love and passion that went into that series really swayed me.
Yeah.
And for good reason. It was a great show. I can't wait for season 2.
Right.
I'm really hoping to get Jamie Lee Curtis on board.
Oh, wow.
Who is actually really wanting to play a character in it. All of these things are great. So with Murderbot, I have to wait and see.
Yeah.
You know, I need to know more about what the process is, who the other cast members are going to be. So maybe I'll give it a chance, but right now, not impressed with Alex Skarsgård. Sorry, Alex.
You know, yeah, no offense, Alex. You know, it's just our initial reaction to this.
Yeah, it's
You could you watch one episode of it, and if it's exactly what you thought it was going to be and hate, then you just don't go any further with it. But then you have to go with the fact that this series is going to go on for at least one season.
Yeah.
And if it's very popular, it could go on for many seasons.
I mean, Murderbot should be popular, in my opinion. Just maybe not this Murderbot.
Well, I mean, there have been where they've taken really great books, made them into crappy movies, and then they reinvent it for a streaming service series, and it turns out really good too. I'm thinking of what is it, The Golden Compass? They did that.
Oh yeah, I was so disappointed by that movie. I remember
the movie was terrible, but the series is not bad at all.
I've only seen season 1, but from what I've seen, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So who knows?
You know, it could go the opposite direction. It could be a really crappy series, and then they drop it after one season. Nobody watches it because they hate it.
And we suddenly get a really great movie.
And you suddenly get a really great movie starring Dev Patel. So, I mean, there's hope in all, because I always think that if a book series is that popular, that they're gonna try it a couple times, and possibly if they don't get it right the first time, they'll try again, because there's too much money involved in stuff like that.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So, but you've made peace. It looks. You don't look at the first time that Kat talked to me about this. She was almost sputtering.
I was in denial, Marty.
You were in denial.
But now I've moved through the 7 stages of grief, and I've come to, finally, acceptance.
Right. Because you can't really do anything to stop it.
No, not me personally, anyway.
No, absolutely not. But, you know, so you'll just take it and see what happens.
I will see.
And maybe you'll be really impressed by all of the other actors that are a part of it, and maybe, you know, the writer is going to be involved in the development of it. And, you know, I would think that if if she is that invested in, and obviously she is, you have to, if you're a writer, you're going to be invested in what you're doing. If you're that invested in it, I would have a really hard time just saying, oh, you're going to give me $10 million for this? Sure, go ahead. But I still would want to say no or yes to stuff.
That being said, Apple TV is for sure going to throw a lot of money at it. It's going to look great. Mm-hmm. It's just that Alex problem.
Okay.
Sorry, Alex Skarsgård.
Well, maybe you'll start seeing like pictures of him as the character, and maybe you'll be like, okay, this might work.
I mean, for the first book, it wears its helmet a lot of the time.
Okay,
so
there you go. Yeah, but I will say that the one image you showed me of the character, Alex Skarsgård, just that it just doesn't work. You might as well take Peter Billingsley from A Christmas Story and put him in the role or something like that. It's just not going to work. Although Alex Skarsgård, like I said, good action star. Which, if that's the way they're going with it,
sure.
She does not look convinced, everybody. I'm just telling you that right now. All right. Well, that is what is on and has been on Cat's Mind for a while. The Murderbot series, and possibly a terrible adaptation of it by Apple TV.
To be seen.
When do you know when it's supposed to be done and started?
Nothing has been announced except for dear old Alex.
Okay, well, there you go, Alex. So, but of course, we can't leave you let you leave Nerd Central Station just yet, Kat. First, we have to get a book recommendation from you, something that you think listeners should immediately run to the library and pick up off the shelf. Okay, Kat, what have you been reading that's good?
Well, it would be way too obvious to say, go read Murderbot, listeners.
Right.
Which starts with All Systems Red, by the way. All Systems Red is the first book.
How many books are in the series?
The latest one makes it 8, I believe.
Oh, wow.
But most of them are novellas. So it can be a quick read, or the audiobooks are also fantastic.
Okay, all right. So.
But recently, I've been really into the Evander Mills mystery series.
Evander Mills, okay.
Mm-hmm, which only has 2 volumes so far, starting with Lavender House and more recently The Bell in the Fog.
Okay. Wow, what great titles.
Yeah, it's about a gay detective in 1952 San Francisco who at the beginning of Lavender House, we find out he used to be a cop. And got caught in a raid on a bar and now has nowhere to go and nothing to do. And a woman who approaches him saying, I want you to solve the murder of my wife.
Wow. Okay.
And so he becomes this point of access for people who can't go to the police because they're gay or queer in some way, to bring justice to the community. And it's a really great historical read.
Wow.
And also a really great mystery.
Now, what if they make that into a movie?
Okay, you see, that one I would love.
Okay, all right.
Like, come on, BBC, Acorn TV,
they could do it.
They know how to do it.
They know how to do it.
If they can make 1 million episodes of Midsummer Murders.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
And Endeavor was such a great historical piece on its own also. Yep. So that one, I'm game for it. I'm game for it.
Now, who is the author of
By Lev A. Rosen. Rosen?
A.C. Okay. And the latest book you said is The Bell in the Fog?
The Bell in the Fog.
All right. And it's the Evander Mills. So if you want to go check out the whole series, you can do that. But that sounds fantastic. I love when they take, like, these kinds of tropes that from different, and an author comes along and just changes it so that it's something new and interesting.
Yeah.
So that sounds really, really fantastic.
It's very hard boiled, but also has some great characters and is a very interesting look at, what the queer scene was in 1952 San Francisco.
Yeah, and see, the thing that always sells me on books and book series are the characters. I love, if you got really good characters, you can probably catch me no matter what genre I'm talking about. So, okay, well, there you go, fellow library nerds. That's Kat's recommendation of something that you should pick up off the shelf. And we have come to the end of this book series episode of Library Nerds with Words. I want to thank Cat Shattuck, Peter White Public Library's local history coordinator, for stopping by Nerd Square for the first episode of Season 4 of Library Nerds with Words. Come back next week when I will be sharing a special nerdy episode of the podcast. It might be a throwback to the very first episode of this whole podcast. So,
Ooh.
yeah, until that time, everyone, stay nerdy. Thank you for listening to Library Nerds with Words, Peter White Public Library's weekly podcast, giving you the word on what's cool at the library. The theme for the podcast is Happy Clappy by John Bartman, used courtesy of Pixabay. This episode was written and produced by Martin Acketts and sponsored by Peter White Public Library. Until next week, pick up a good book, listen to some good music, watch a good movie, attend a great event, and remember, library nerds are the coolest people around.